y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Sistas in Crime with Shy and Toy. My name is Toy, short for Latoya.
And my name is Shy, short for Shamia.
And today we're coming at you with an episode out of Akron, Ohio. This one, trigger warning on everything. Trigger warning, okay? And this one may be a little lengthy because it's a lot that we have to cover that is pertinent information to the case. So this guy goes by the name of Stanley Ford. I don't know if a lot of people know about him, but he is featured on Fear Thy Neighbor. I forgot what season, maybe was it season 13 or season 8?
Season 8.
I think it was season 8 episode 13 and 14. So he's so bad. He had 2 episodes. The only one I seen on there that had 2 episodes. So it's part 1 and part 2. So as always, we're gonna start off. It ain't really a lot of background with Stanley, but I'm gonna let my sister take over and start off, and we gonna go from there because we gonna just jump right into it since we got a lot to cover.
Okay. So, y'all, today we're covering the case of Stanley Ford. So, like my sister said, he was on the show Fear Thy Neighbor. Well, the case was on Fear Thy Neighbor. Please go through and check it out because if we did the whole shebang, y'all, like we would be here all night, and we are not doing that. So we're going to condense it as much as we can. So to start off, I'm just going to give a little background about Stanley. So all the neighbors reported that Stanley loved his community. He was retired and a stay-at-home father of 2 girls, and he was married. Everybody talked about how dedicated he was to his family. He was a Christian man, and he always presented himself as a strong Christian man. The neighborhood where they lived, it was called Bondi Hills, and he took so much pride in it. They talked about how he just loved the community. He wanted to do the best by everybody. He would go and cut the neighbor's grass, with no payment at all, anything like that. He just believed in supporting his community and stuff like that. He wanted his community to be safe for others and for his family. He was the longest resident in the community, well, in that neighborhood. So he had been there the longest. So he felt like it was his duty to take care of the community. So one of his neighbors, his name was Lindell Lewis. He was 56, and he also had a girlfriend. Her name was Gloria Jean Hart. She was 61. Lindell was also a resident of Bondi Hills, kind of like similar backgrounds of Mr. Stanley, both Christian men. Lindell had stayed there a good bit as well, just like Mr. Stanley. They were very good friends at first. Lindell, they say he was a very good man. They talked about his girlfriend. She was very nice, very kind. Lindell really loved her. Lindell's son, was actually on the episode, kind of giving information and kind of sharing, stuff about his father. And he said one thing he can say, my dad really loved Jean, or he called her Jeannie. He also believed in giving back, so he often rented out his basement to people who may have been previously incarcerated and were trying to get up on their feet, or anybody that was just trying to get on their feet. He opened up his basement for them to reside in until their next come up came. So, one man that Mr. Lindell ended up letting move in his home was Thomas Hughley. Now, Thomas, he was incarcerated, but like I said, Mr. Lindell, he looked past that. He just believed in giving somebody a second chance. And I think we all should, do that. I mean, everybody might not agree, but it is what it is. But Mr. Lindell, he did. He believed in second chances and supporting people. So one night, basically they described as the night Thomas moved in, that's when things started to change. So Thomas held a party, and that really, really upset Stanley because he was like, he just wasn't that type of man. He loved the Lord. He didn't want that crap around his house. He said, we ain't about to have that. No drugs, alcohol. He didn't want none of that. And according to Stanley, that's all the stuff that he saw. Personally, my opinion, mind your damn business. But hey, he was mad.
What they got to do with
So,
you? Ain't got nothing to do with you.
right? And it got nothing to do with you. But anyway, what do I know? Anyway, so he expressed, Stanley went over the next day, not minding his business, and was like, hey, I seen the drug activity. I don't want that around my children or in this neighborhood. So Lindell was kind of like, well, I understand. However, Thomas is very useful to me. Thomas was doing lawn work and house care, like helping him because Mr. Lindell wasn't, I mean, he wasn't old, but he did have some issues because you'll know later on in the case, you'll find out like what was going on with him. So Stanley, being the nosy man he was, did some research on Thomas. And once again, being nosy, found out that he had a history of burglary. So he went back to Lindell and was like, hey, did you know about this? Because, he was arrested for burglary. And I think he just moved in with you to scope out the neighborhood so that he could pinpoint whose house he was going to burglarize next. And Thomas, basically took up for him and was like, no, no, this is not what it is, But Lindell didn't really believe it. So that night, it seems like Stanley's words were prophetic because that night there was Lindell's car was broken into. And later on, there were also break-ins. So Stanley approached him several times about Thomas. So Lindell just got fed up and he installed some cameras. Shortly after, someone tried to break in Stanley's home, and y'all, it was just like back and forth, right? This person would have their car broken into, and then this person, it was just a bunch of mess. They would call the police. They were saying, police wouldn't do anything. So finally, Stanley's house, it was an attempted break-in. And the way they depicted it on the show was they tried to break into his daughter's rooms. So that was just a no-no, which I completely understand that part. So, of course, Stanley went in to Lindell's house again, fussing and cursing. I get that part. So Lindell, he was like, all right, I apologize. I'm going to pay for your window.
Okay.
So all of their back and forth eventually led to a physical altercation, which, they said Lindell tried to remain the peace, offered to pay for the window, but it just ended up being a physical fight. The episode was funny to me because you got two old men trying to fight, and I'm gonna keep it real. The actors were terrible. They were terrible. The actors were horrible.
I could have
But
done a better job. But
I could have too. But it was just like, you stay off my property. And they were pointing their fingers like that. I was like, what is wrong with y'all? Like, whatever. But that part was funny, but this case is far from funny. So over time, there was a lot of car break-ins and a lot of cars set on fire. Mr. Lindell's car was set afire, and Lindell just decided to install a alarm system with cameras, which really upset Stanley because he was like, I don't want your eyes on me. I don't want it recording me or whatever. So he was just like against it, which, further intensified the problem. So Stanley said that one of the ladies who used to party at Lindell's house approached him about basically having sex with him, and that really made Stanley angry. So y'all, neighbors said they heard Stanley say things like, this is my neighborhood. I'm going to do everything in my power to protect it. It's God's will for me to protect this neighborhood. Like, he really thought he ran the neighborhood. And y'all, that's nice and all, but if you listen to that gives you an idea that he is not well. Like, he basically thought he was like the mayor and like nobody is gonna mess up his neighborhood. So next, I'm gonna let my sister take over so she can tell you about the remainder of everything that went on.
All right, so now we got this beef, this feud going back between Lindell and Stanley, and all the other neighbors just trying to stay out of it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so Lindell, as my sister said, he loved to help people. Him and Jeannie both. So he had, he already had Thomas Hewley staying in the basement. So he then started letting people who needed a place to stay in his van. This upset Stanley again because he done proclaimed himself to be like the mayor of Sherbani Hills, whatever the case may be. He think he running things, and he was convinced that this van was a sex den. I don't know why he thought that, but whatever. So he began staying up late at night like he was a watchman. So he was just stalking the neighborhood, making sure everything is copacetic, not minding his business as always. So then Lindell's home was vandalized. And because they were at odds, so quite naturally, he pointed the finger at Stanley. Then after that, Stanley's wife's car becomes vandalized. And then
Mm-hmm.
Stanley pointed the finger at Thomas Hewlett because he didn't like Thomas. Keep in mind, Stanley and Lindell were completely fine until Thomas moved in. They were completely
Mm-hmm.
fine. So Thomas started a lot of this inside Stanley. Okay. So all this back and forth, burglaries going on, vandalism, windows getting broken, whatever. Now Lindell's car somehow mysteriously gets set on fire. This happened following an argument with Stanley. Now, the fire investigators suspect they didn't point the finger at anyone because they thought at the time that the van caught on fire because the people that were living inside of the van that Lindell let live inside the van, were smoking, and it was basically like a tent. They were sleeping in there, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever what the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So shortly after, Lindell, he wasn't in the greatest of health, so he has to have hip surgery. So at this time, he like in the episode, it showed him coming home and he looked like he was a little scared and on edge because now that he's had this hip surgery, he felt more vulnerable and incapacitated to, the issues going on with Stanley. Like, you have to understand at this point, a lot of people suspecting that Stanley is doing things, but nobody has any really outright proof or anything. The police is not looking at him yet. The police don't been called out so much. They're aware of this ongoing feud back and forth between the neighbors, but they're not aware of anything crazy going on with Stanley other than, he so-called run this neighborhood. If you do anything he don't like, he getting you, in your face. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but what's crazy is that in the midst of all this, something prompted Lindell to call his ex-wife and tell her, hey, if anything ever happens to me, look at my neighbor across the street. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
called his ex-wife and told her that. So
Mm-hmm.
because of his surgery, Lindell was kind of stuck on the second floor. And, he still had Thomas down in the basement. So the parties and things were still going on. All of this was still upsetting Stanley. So April 18th, 2016, after midnight, Lindell's house catches on fire. So Thomas, who is in the basement, sees the fire from the basement window and he's able to get out. Lindell and Jeannie are upstairs. So Lindell is telling Jeannie, go ahead, get out, get out. But I like that touched my heart. Jeannie
Yeah.
wouldn't leave him.
Yeah.
Jeannie would not leave him there, defenseless and not being able to do anything. And so
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, they weren't able to get out of the second story. And I can just imagine what the neighbors were thinking because they were
Yeah.
watching all of this transpire and no one was able to help them. Like, Thomas was going to get a ladder to try to get him down, but Lindell was like, I can't do it. Like, I can't get out this window because, mind you, he just had surgery. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, they both died from smoke inhalation. So the
Mm-hmm.
fire department comes out, and basically they had the K9 unit and they discovered that accelerants were used. So this was not an accidental fire, it was aggravated arson. So they interviewed Thomas just for the simple fact he was the only survivor of this fire and he was the only one that made it out. And because, like my sister said, he kind of had a history, he had been incarcerated previously, and he was acting confused and kind of all over the place, which I can imagine he was in shock. This is a good friend of his that he just saw die in a fire, and he couldn't do anything to get him out. So that's probably where he was at. But he told police, he was like, Stanley did it. He
Mhm.
immediately suspected Stanley. And it was very questionable because all of the neighbors were standing outside and except Stanley. And Stanley literally lived directly across the street. And even when Lindell's son and them came out and they were, outside talking to authorities and stuff like that, Stanley yells at them to get off of his grass. And I'm
Yeah.
like, two people directly across the street from you just died in a house fire, and you worry about somebody stepping on your grass.
Yes, very
Sir,
suspicious.
if you don't get the hell on.
Yes.
So so the police did question Stanley. And Stanley was very standoffish.
Mhm.
He said he didn't see anything. And he basically insinuated that maybe God did this because he was not pleased about the things that were going on at Lindell's house. Sir, I don't know what God you serve, but
So
that ain't how
brief
they work.
interjection. Right, brief
Yes,
interjection. I don't know what it is, and it's been a lot. That's been on my mind a lot, so that's why I'm saying it. I don't know what it is with people using God and Jesus to weaponize against people,
they,
justifying mistreating people, judging
yes.
people. Like, I don't know what it is, but that needs to stop because
I've been seeing
I,
more and more of that, sis.
more and more of that. Like, God is a God of everybody. He loves
Exactly.
everybody, every race, every sexuality. Believe it or not, every sexuality, yes. Every,
Everyone.
I mean, everybody, every gender, everybody. And I think this whole narrative that's being pushed that God loves, but he only loves certain folk, that is far from the truth. Um,
Very far.
and that has really bothered me a lot. And I just wanted to put that out there, especially with this case. It really made me warm um, that he kept, you know, yeah, I'm not agreeing with the drugs and alcohol. I mean, but it was none of his business. But definitely using
Right.
God to weaponize his actions, absolutely not.
How it's so easy to mind your business.
It is so easy. It costs nothing to
So
mind your
easy
business. It is
to
completely
mind
free.
your business. Those people were not bothering you. They were not physically harming you. They weren't attacking you. They weren't even verbally attacking you.
Mm-mm.
Mind your
They weren't
business.
on your
Stay
property.
on your Stay on your property. I stay on my. That's how me and my neighbors is over here. They don't
Yep.
bother me, and I don't bother them, baby.
Yep.
Unless I have to.
That's
Because
how it's
one
supposed
time,
to be.
Instacart left my grocery order at a neighbor's house, and I had to, hi, you got my groceries, boo. But we cool.
Yeah.
I can do them like that. You know what I mean? But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
yes, all that.
Right.
Stop using the Lord to, what's the word I'm looking for? To
Yeah.
condone and justify your bullshit.
Yeah.
Jesus is
Basically.
not
Yeah.
pleased.
Yes.
Jesus is not pleased. Okay, so in light of all this, the police recover the video footage. Remember, Lindell has set up security cameras, and he had another neighbor that set up security cameras. So they recover video footage from both of these homes, and they see a figure that basically runs away from the home after the fire was started and approaches Stanley's house. But the footage wasn't that clear, so it was a hooded figure, like they had a hood on, so they couldn't exactly make out who it was. Now, there were quite a few suspects in this fire. Okay, starting with
Yes.
Lindell's ex-wife. And the reason they suspected her is because she had a life insurance policy out on him. And then
Mm-hmm.
when they asked her to take a polygraph, she declined and became very defensive. So, okay, you're a suspect because why you acting like this is.
Yeah.
So then they discover, due to the company Lindell kept, some people were drug addicts, some people
Mm-hmm.
were, felons and stuff like that. He had they also suspected his ex-wife's new boyfriend, and I forgot his name, but he was a suspect as well. There was a
Yeah.
guy named Ronald. who lived
Yeah,
in the basement with Thomas. He was a suspect. And of course, Thomas was a suspect because, they both have drug history and stuff like that. However, they both were very cooperative with detectives. And then
mm-hmm.
lastly, there was some guy named Macklemore who was a friend of Lindell's, and they had fell out because Macklemore also used drugs, and on his recent bender, him and Lindell kind of had a little spat and weren't on the best of terms, so they were looking at him as well. Now, after all this kind of dies down, they don't arrest anybody, don't charge anybody. They have a list of suspects, but can't make the evidence, point any certain way. So
Mm-hmm.
Stanley starts looking to buy a third house on the street. I guess in his mind, he's going to buy up the properties on the street and prevent people from moving in that he does not like. Speaks to the
Mm-hmm.
mental, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question is Stanley was a stay at home dad. His wife was a full time teacher. Where y'all getting so much money from?
Mm-hmm.
But
My thing
anyway,
is, my thing is, with all this extra time he got to be in everybody's business, he should have been going to adult daycare and fellowshipping with some people his age. That's what he should have been doing instead of worrying about
oh, why you
who partying.
or you could have got a job as a door greeter at Walmart, bro. Like, mind your business.
Or go to the nursing home. They look for volunteers all the time. Go to the hospital and hold some babies.
All
They
the
need some
time.
people. Work somebody
You can
work
go
part
to nursing
time
home.
somewhere.
Listen, since you
Go,
so holy, go to the nursing home, read a couple scriptures.
go to the library and read to the kids. I mean, anything. I mean, I can think of a list of things you can do to mind your business, sir.
Exactly. But he ain't want to do none of that. So his mind, he
Nope.
trying to buy houses to prevent people from living on that street. So his plan did not work because somebody else bought this house. This was the
Mm-hmm.
Huggins Boggs family, and the house was not, it was a fixer upper. It wasn't like a brand new house, it wasn't the best or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. But this was a family of 8. They had 6 children, and you have the 2 adults. The children varied in age range from 17 all the way down to 1. And the two parents, Dennis and Angela, Dennis was 35 and Angela was 38. So they
Yeah.
did meet Stanley one Sunday after church, and things were fine. They introduced themselves, things was copacetic. However, Dennis had a little extracurricular things going on the side. He sold a little marijuana, little Mary
Mm-hmm.
Jane. And Stanley didn't like that. Stanley found out. He saw him, kind of, I guess, doing a deal or whatever. And, he approached him. He's like, man, you selling drugs? First of all, I've been like, why is that any of your damn business? I'm over here on my
Right.
property, minding my business. Why are you worried about what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with over here? That's number one.
Right.
Number
This
two,
man got to
why do
feed
you
his
think
family.
that you can? Yes. Number two, he got 6 kids. Number two, why do you think it's okay for you to come out and question anybody about their choices? Who are
And
you?
and why do you have your eye on everybody? Why?
My, like,
I don't understand.
what is going on with you and your wife? Like, y'all ain't going out on dates. Y'all ain't doing lunches. Y'all ain't, like, is it just church on Sunday and that's it? And then the rest of the time you just walk in the streets?
I just picture
Like,
him. This ain't funny. But I just picture him with a rental cop suit on, just walking around that neighborhood. Like he neighborhood
no. Top
watch,
flight
or like he
security.
a HOA member or something.
Top flight security of the world,
The
Craig. They
world,
need
Craig.
security in the world, Craig. No, real okay. Let me go on topic for 1 second. I legit had a neighbor like that when I moved over here to this neighborhood. Thank God she moved. She sold her house, but she every single day that lady walked the street and checked and looked in people's yard as she was walking. And if she saw something she did not like, she reported it to the HOA. It got so bad that the HOA started blocking her emails. And she had kept trying to be head of the HOA. They wouldn't let her
No.
do it. No one wanted her to be head of HOA. Everybody over here minds their business except her. And I was so glad She caught me one day, said she was selling her house, and I said, thank God, because she had reported me on some bullshit for something
Really?
that she did. She reported me because my trash bin, I left it out on the curb overnight, but that was because it was pouring down raining. I was not going out there to get that trash bin, taking it back to behind the house. So all they did was gave me a warning. I didn't get in trouble or anything. And then my other neighbor told me, "Oh, trust me, the HOA is aware of her, so you good. Don't worry about nothing." He said, "I just want you to
Okay.
know I didn't do it because I mind my business."
Right.
Jay, and I know you do too. I
Right.
said facts.
Okay.
But anyway, that just goes to show how crazy some of these neighbors can be, and especially when they're older and retired, because she was an older
Mhm.
white lady and she retired and she didn't have nothing to do. She didn't have no man, didn't have no kids. All these people have to, and he had kids. That's
Mhm.
crazy to me. All they have to do, they ain't got nothing but time.
Yep.
Nothing but time. But anyway, so they started getting multiple reports of break-ins and stuff in the neighborhood, a lot of vandalism and things going on. And Stanley suspected that the new family, their son, who was a 14-year-old, I think his name was Jared, they thought he was responsible because there was this
Mhm.
other house on the street who was a dad and his son that was a teenage son, and he didn't like them either. And there was this neighbor who was this white lady named Beth. They said that it kind of made her uncomfortable, and because Stanley liked her, he kind of made it his mission to look after her and see the things on the street for all the other neighbors too. But ain't nobody asked you to do this, sir. Anyway,
Mhm.
so he claims he observed Jerry and the other little boy's name was Devontae breaking in the cars and stuff like that. So of course, but see, my problem is first he tried to address the children.
Yes,
Then
you
he
don't do
went to the
that.
parents. You
Yep.
don't address children. You don't address nobody kids. You immediately go to the parents. Okay.
Exactly.
So when he did talk to the parents, Angela talked to Jared, and Jared was like, no, which I kind of believe Jared was lying. I'm just throw that out there. Jared was like, no, we wasn't breaking in
Mhm.
the cars. We was looking in them, but we didn't break into them. Why are you looking in them?
Yeah, like
So,
what are you
but
looking for?
still,
And then when it being a series of vehicles being vandalized and broken
yes,
into, you know,
exactly.
sorry, but
Suspect.
yeah. Yeah.
So, and this kind of, and not only that, so not only was Angela worried about that, Angela was still afraid of this possible arsonist on the loose, because this kind of triggered her, for the simple fact she
Mhm.
was married once before. I think her ex-husband's name was Patrick. That's the father of her oldest.
Mhm.
So Patrick had, threw some kerosene on Angela, pushed her in the bathtub, and tried to light her on fire. So she don't play with
Mhm.
fire. So, the break ins in combination with the arsonist still being on the loose, because this is, I think it's almost a year after the fact, and they still don't have any arrest on that case. And she knew that her ex husband was getting, he was about to be released from prison on parole. She was on edge.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, in light of all this, Stanley teams up with Beth, and they call themselves going to
Mhm.
confront Devontae. When they go up on the porch, Anthony is on the porch. Anthony is Devontae's father.
Mhm.
That's the father and the son I told you live in the neighborhood as well. So, because someone had vandalized Beth's car and they confronted him, accusing him. Wrong thing, because Anthony immediately popped off. They say he was a little intoxicated, but he immediately popped off. And then, so of course, Beth got scared. She went running crocodile tears or whatever. Girl, please, because you approach that man with Stanley. Y'all team up like y'all superheroes. Anyway, nobody feel sorry for you. Anyway, so yeah, Anthony was not having it when Beth and Stanley tried to confront him about his son.
Mhm.
Now, he yells at them, they kind of go about their business. In the meantime, he's still also watching the Boggs and the Huggins family. Now, they were kind of like Lindell. They like to socialize, invite people over. They would barbecue and stuff like that. Stanley ain't like that, because in his mind, everybody a prostitute and everybody on drugs.
Everybody was gay, on
Everybody
drugs,
prostitute, selling it.
prostituting,
Like,
having
okay,
fun.
How dare you on my street?
How dare you smile and have fun?
You better take that to the other neighborhood. Don't you do that over here. So
We do
listen,
not do that. We don't smile over here. We don't have fun. We don't grill out over here.
we don't
None of
do
it.
none of that.
All
If
of
it
that is
ain't,
sin.
we just read scripture and that's it.
Exactly. Good, clean fun.
Now listen, y'all. Mind you, even his wife is telling him to leave people alone at this point.
And she was like, Stanley, chill, leave them alone. Like, she was even admiring. She was like, oh, they're having a good time. It's their house. They can do whatever they want to do.
Exactly. Now, Stanley becomes even more mad at these two little teenagers because they walking on this grass and stuff. And so that he give, you know what, he's giving Stanley from Friday. Stay off my grass. Okay.
But times 5.
Yes.
But times 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stay off his grass. So Stanley said that Devontae became confrontational to him when he was telling him to stop doing what they was doing. And I guess, you know, Devontae wasn't paying him no attention. He wasn't giving in because don't nobody pay him no attention at this point because you don't run nothing, sir. And Stanley threatened Devontae and said he would body him. And this was overheard by a couple neighbors. Yeah. And when you say you're going to body somebody, you know,
put them in a body bag.
You're going to put them in the ground. You know what I'm saying? So next thing we know, their car, Stanley and his, I mean, not Stanley, I'm sorry. Devontae and his daddy, they're the Sams. Their car set on fire. And it was determined to be arson because it was a rag placed into the gas thing and somebody lit the rag. And at the time it happened, Stanley was literally standing when the fire department came out. He was literally standing in the middle of the street watching them put the fire out. That ain't suspicious. Okay. So then, Thomas, you know, who had previously stayed with Lindell, he didn't go anywhere. He stayed in the neighborhood and kind of kept a watch on things because he already suspected Stanley wasn't one responsible for all the stuff going on in the neighborhood, right? So, you know, after that situation happened, he confronted Stanley and was like, you know, I know you're the one responsible for these arsons and things and these break-ins and vandalism. And then, you know, nothing really happened. They exchanged words and then they went on about their separate ways. Between time, the Huggins Boggs family decided to go on vacation to Florida to visit their, I think it was Angela's mom. And so they took the kids with them, went to Florida on a little vacation. When they came back, they decided that they were going to end up moving to Florida. So they were about to put the home up for sale and everything. And even Angela's like, you know, since we're moving out of state, we're going to move to Florida. I'm going to even decide to go forward with the divorce. So I'm going to finally divorce Patrick because at this point they were separated. May 14th, 2017 rolls around. Now things about to get real, you know, trigger warning on everything. This broke me down. Okay. May 14th, 2017.
You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You can go ahead and take over from here.
Okay, gotcha. So the family, the Huggins Boggs family, of course, they're a blended family. So like my sis said, they were getting ready she was going to divorce Patrick. And all of a sudden, one night, a fire starts. So immediately they're trying to hurry up and get out. Keep in mind, they have a lot of kids, but they're trying to get out. But when they went downstairs, they noticed that the fire was blocking their way out of the house. So immediately they're trying to get out, but they are not able to get out. Unfortunately, what happened was they ended up calling the fire department. A neighbor ended up calling the fire department. Fire department comes, but they're trying to hook up the hydrant, but the hydrant was not functional because they used it a year before to put out the fire that was at Lindell's house. And that frustrated me because I was like, what? That was insane.
So y'all always keep watering them hydrants.
Exactly. So y'all, the firefighters had to go like 2 or 3 blocks to find another hydrant. And imagine how much time that took for them to find another hydrant to go back and put the fire out. When they got back to the house, they said all the neighbors were like, at first they heard the family like, please help, please help. They heard the kids screaming. And unfortunately, y'all, like they heard the kids screaming, they heard their parents screaming, and then the neighbors just report they just didn't hear anything else. So the firefighters could not go in because of the heat and the intensity of the fire. And after they put it out, they went upstairs and they saw the family, in one room. They were killed, unfortunately. And you could see, based off the way they said their bodies were positioned, the parents were shielding their kids, trying to protect their kids. That broke my heart because whoever did it, I'm pretty sure as we're going along, you suspect who did it, but there is nothing that deep for you to want to hurt somebody in that way, because like their kids, they definitely didn't do anything to you. Nothing was that deep. So immediately
And real
detectives
quick, mind you, the youngest child was 1.
was 1 year old. Yeah. What could
1 year old.
what could a 1 year old do to you that would make you drive you to this, to commit this against this family? So detectives, of course, they're all like the community is in shambles. They don't nobody really speak with one another like they used to because a lot has happened. So this is the second fire. So keep in mind the case with Lindell and his murder, that fire. The case was closed at that point. It was murder, yeah. The case was closed at that point, and like they made no arrest. It went cold. They kind of just, it is what it is. But when the detectives came out to the Boggs family, they noticed some similarities in which from this fire and the fire of Lindell's home. So they ended up pulling some cameras and they saw a similar person from Lindell's fire to this one. They saw the same guy, wore the same outfit, had the same walk. Like there's just very much similarity. So they were okay. And multiple cameras caught this person. So they ended up seeing the person leave the area and go in the direction where Stanley's house was. Ding, ding, ding. So, of course, they went in to question Stanley and his wife. And they asked Stanley, like, where were you the night of the fire? He was like, I was asleep. And his wife looked, she was like,
what? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to
she
edit
looked
that
at
out.
him.
She was like, what?
Yeah, she was like, you was asleep? No, you were up. And I was like, oh, Lord, she the op. She done told on him. But rightfully so.
She tired of saying shit.
But she tired. Like, but, in that case, I understand her completely. So, he was lying or whatever. And the detectives even noticed, like, her body language when he said that. Like, and they caught it. They was like, okay, so, we might have something here. So they ended up going on they looked at the camera footage and they saw that the person who was walking around when these fires would start had a similar walk to Stanley. So somehow they got the warrant, I guess, to search the home and his mother's home, because we forgot to mention Stanley not only owned his home, he owned the home next door, which was his mother's home. So he had his home, and then his mother's home was mainly used for like storage and stuff like that. Doing little stuff, but that was his property too. So they had a warrant to search his mom's old house. And they saw that it had an alarm system. Now, he had set up this alarm system back when Lindell set up his, because when they were having all these burglaries and house fires and this and that, he ended up putting up one as well, which kind of led to his downfall, because they saw the alarm system and they were able to pull the records and saw the night that the Boggs family house fire started, the alarm system was turned off at 2:27 a.m. They were able to determine that's when the house fire started at the Boggs family. So they put two and two together and was like, oh, we got our guy. So he was arrested and charged with 9 counts of murder, y'all. They said that was the highest in the highest number of murders for one person in Akron, Ohio. Like, he made history. That's not the way you make history, but he made history, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
So he, of course, they arrested him, and so they bring him in to be arrested. And of course, they start talking to him, like trying to get him to confess. And finally, he confessed and said he did it. So went to court, and this man got 9 years, 9 consecutive life sentences for each person he murdered, y'all. Imagine going to jail, going to prison forever at your age. I mean, he was 56, so I mean, it is what it is. But my issue was, like, you are using God and the Lord to weaponize people and to justify your actions. Because what was crazy was the daughter, Brittany, who survived. There was a survivor. I forgot to mention there was a survivor, Brittany. The only reason why she survived was because she was out of town working, and she got the call that her whole family had been killed. And she's actually on the episode too. She just dropped to her knees and started screaming because her whole family is gone. And it broke her heart. So she actually came home, and this was before Stanley got arrested. So she came home, and she was just looking at the house like in disbelief. She was just so distraught. And Stanley actually came up and hugged her and was like, I really hope they find who did this, and I hope they burn in hell. And I was like, sir, it's you. It's you. So, y'all, that's the case of Mr. Stanley. Very disgusting human being, very much so mentally ill. I don't know whether you call that, I don't know. I'm not going to diagnose that man. I'm just going to say he was crazy. Yes. But very disgusting individual, and there's no simple way to put it.
That he, in addition to the 9 consecutive life sentences, he also got 21 years for the attempted murder of Thomas. Because remember, Thomas was in the house when that fire started in Lindell's home. He just was able to get out, so he did get 9 consecutive life sentences plus 21 years. So yes. He ain't going nowhere. No parole. No possibility for parole ever again in life. Ever. Yeah. So hang tight, Stanley.
Hang tight. But one thing, and a lot of people disagree with, and I'm kind of in the middle, and we're going to have this brief discussion, and then we're going to head out. But y'all, they mentioned that a lot of the family members actually expressed that they forgave Stanley for what he did. And that really touched me, because everybody has different perspectives of forgiveness. Forgiveness is for you to move forward. It doesn't dismiss the person. I look at it as a way to move on, but some people were just like, how dare they were like, we would never forgive him for that.
Yeah. I personally don't know if I would be able to forgive immediately right away, because you killed 5 children and 2 adults. 5 kids. 5 kids. From 1 up to 14. These babies did nothing to you.
Yes, correct.
You have whatever issues you have with the grown folks, but these babies, these innocent babies, these children did nothing to you. And I'm wondering, what the relationship is with his own children. And I know that wife probably at that point, she probably let that go by the wayside, because she was already turning over on him when the police was investigating. She like, what? You was not here with me.
I wouldn't be surprised if she moved to different states and everything.
To disassociate herself from that, because that's what I would do. I was never married. If that was me, I don't know no Stanley. I was never married to Stanley. I don't know that man. No.
All
But
of it.
y'all, like we said, this one was very deep this week. We really appreciate y'all hanging in there with us on this one. I know we've been trying to get them a little shorter, but there were just certain things we had to cover. And we thought this was a really good one because I have
Mm-hmm.
not seen this one publicized like that. And when I came across it, I was immediately like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah.
So as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, leave any suggestions. Anything
Mm-hmm.
you want us to cover, send us an email, sistasinCrimewithShiandToy@gmail.com. That is our name on all of our platforms. Right now, we're on YouTube and Spotify. Leave a comment, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Anything else, boo?
That's all, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.